seems too like too strenuous somehow. For some people, it's uh, there's a sense of working to keep the eyes open and too much information coming in. It's possible then to close your eyes. We've been saying letting in just a little bit of light. You can actually kind of, if you were focusing on it, you could see your eyelashes. Um, and for some people, even that seems too active somehow. And then, you know, try closing the eyes. When I was first starting, I did tend to go back and forth some. I was trying to really learn to sit with this relaxed gaze, quite open. I mean, downward cast eyes, so eyelids, 2/3, 3/4 closed, I suppose, but still very aware of the space in the room. Just another sense gate. And for some reason, that just felt like a strain. So I could pull it off for a while, and then I would feel that it was demanding too much of my attention, and I would let myself close my eyes. But then, if that became sleepy or distracted, you can it can be. Somebody really appreciated that passage from Harada Roshi about sitting with your mind as taut as a bowstring, and closing the eyes can work against that. It can just be a little too slack. So then, if I notice that, I open my eyes. But I wouldn't recommend constant oscillation or constant checking in with that. That's just part of the practice, is to find that balance, fully relaxed, fully alert. Then bringing in a koan once Henry's been so beautifully guiding this to get us to a place of poise and ease and balance and groundedness, and then invite in, whether it's the breath or if it's a koan. Yeah, I've appreciated that. I do not see how, if it's a koan, how that would in any way alter my sense of what I'm doing with my eyes. What about you, Henry?
I have nothing to add. Perfectly put on all counts from my point of view, Valerie. Thank you.
Okay, next question. What is and isn't different as mu compares to Sanskrit mantra? Is vibration of sound important with mu?
Maybe I could speak this a little bit. I mean, the two kinds of experience I've had a little bit of, with the mantra would be TM, where, it was definitely mantra practice. And there was a notion that your mantra had real sort of sacred qualities, that that there was something about the vibration of it, and we never were told what they meant, but or it meant. We only ever were given one mantra, I think. I didn't go deeply into TM, as some you could go deeper, and I didn't, but I did it for several years. And the mantra was really it was different from a koan. You might think that sitting with mu is a bit mantra-like because you repeat it the same way that you do a mantra. But a koan is, I'd be interested to hear what Valerie has to say about this, but it's intrinsically somehow a question or an invitation to explore the nature of this moment. I don't know whether that's true for mantras. It might be. The other kind of mantra experience I've had is simply a, kind of beginning and end of yoga classes, where it's so lovely to sit with, sound vibrations of perhaps of om, or occasionally just simple little chants, which I don't know whether they count as mantra or not. Yeah, I mean, I don't know quite where the line is between, say a repeated chant in the mind, like, Om Mani Padme Hum or something like that. Is that a mantra? I don't know. Maybe it's not that important, but anyway, I don't think a koan has some, I don't know if the word is magical, but sort of, I don't think it's got sort of sacred connotations or properties. What do you think, Valerie?
Yeah, I think it is different from a mantra, and I've noticed you sometimes describe, and I appreciate this, becoming intimate with the sound. Of course, we're silently intoning it. It is silently intoning the breath, you might say. But it's not the same as just this quality of sound. I like this question, this space, this invitation. To say it's a mantra is almost to ascribe a content that it's actually not, not at all. It's inviting us, beyond that, or into something that's not about content. But there is a familiarity for people, I think, who've done mantra practice and then take up, for example, mu. I just thought of this in the Catholic tradition. I'm not Catholic, but studied Thomas Merton, some other Catholic traditions, mystics. And there's a phrase called ejaculatory prayer, which I remember the first time I heard it, I thought, wow, kind of funny. But I love it actually, because it's just this, throughout the day, there's the impulse in that tradition to offer thanks, or a prayer of compassion, invite mercy on the world. Yeah, and so I think this constancy of mu, though, doesn't even have that. It has all of that. It's so vast that it's like, no, it's not that. It's all of it. It's just absorbs everything. So I couldn't really call it, a mantra or a prayer, but at the same time, it's all of it, I guess I would say.
Valerie, that just got me thinking about the Jesus prayer that the Orthodox Christians, Greek and Russian Orthodox, especially I think the Russian Orthodox are keen on it, which you're supposed to recite constantly, in your mind. I mean, many of those who many who might have heard of it might have done so from Salinger, one of his short stories, or is it a short story? Is it a novella or something? Franny and Zooey.
Yeah.
The sister, I guess that's whichever it is, has got obsessed with the Jesus prayer, and which you're supposed to just keep repeating it. That might be a bit more like mu in a certain way, because I think they even, from my little taste of Orthodox Christianity, going to some monasteries on Mount Athos many years ago, they were definitely kind of closer to deep they were quite Zen-like in the way they approached contemplation, and they didn't think of the prayer as like, I got the sense that it was more about repeating it and less about what it meant.
Mhm.
You know, because again, with mu, it's not about what it means.
Right.
You know. Anyway, and again,
Yeah.
I think that's
And there's the injunction, to pray without, or the invitation, pray without ceasing. And in the mystical Christian tradition, that I took that as just coming to the place where your every action is an act of prayer. Like mu is doing everything.
Right. And that, like Bodhidharma's teacher Prajnatara, who said, I'm constantly reciting sutras.
Yeah.
When I breathe in,
Yes.
it's a million sutras. When I
Yeah.
breathe out, it's a million sutras.
Yeah. That resonates with mu.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not really, again, it's not really mantra, is it?
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Okay. Dan, should we move on?
Okay, last question from yesterday. What might your advice be for using mu off the mat? Do they work with sensation, for example, suggests in the moment, notice the sensation associated with what you're doing. Similar with mu, bring mu to the experience. Is there a mechanic you would suggest for this practice with a student?
Valerie, can I jump in first on this?
Yes.
Something's just coming up. It's a great point, and there's I would say, and it'd be interesting to hear whether Valerie agrees or has other points. That there's kind of seem to be two main ways you might consider working with mu off the mat, and that come to my mind right away. One is that you just do, like when sitting, you just lightly brush it down the exhale, even when you're walking, driving, whatever you may be doing. No reason not to. Although they say if you're walking down the street, it's fine to do mu, but stop when you're crossing the street. I think Yamada Cohen says that somewhere, meaning in case you're too lost in it and you get run over or something, I suppose. But the other thing is that yes, you can actually label sense experience with mu. So if you're walking and you're sensing the contact between the soles of the feet and the path, you can label that mu. If you are hearing birdsong, mu, just call it mu. Hearing traffic, call it mu. Feeling your seat on a chair, call it mu. So every little sense experience can be labeled mu. They can all be called mu. And you could explore that if you're curious about that. Valerie, how about you?
Yeah, I like that a lot. And the other thing that I found myself naturally doing, and when I was really working and initially with mu, and then also when I had this job that was long days, very active, of letting mu do everything, and checking in with that. What's it like for mu to drive? What's it like for mu to chop these vegetables? And somehow it became very unitive, very simple. So I wasn't really asking that question in a conscious way. I just would notice mu driving and then check that out. Mu getting dressed, mu taking a shower, mu brushing the teeth. Very intimate and alive, and it goes everywhere.
Lovely. Yeah. Dan, should we go on?
Okay, next question. begins with a statement and then the question. This week has been a very powerful experience. Thank you. I have a question relating to the words regarding to save and to savor. I feel a tension or dichotomy between openness of non-duality and the task of reducing suffering, which would seem to require a discernment between good and bad. Could you speak to how I might start reconsidering this tension? Thank you.
Valerie, I have a quote I could offer right now.
Fabulous.
Okay. This is from Soko Morinaga. Now, I don't know it's 100% pertinent, but I think in some way it probably is. You may remember when I was reading from, this is Soko Morinaga's book, An Ongoing Lesson in the Extent of My Own Stupidity. And he talked about this woman who was a close friend of his master, Zwigan Roshi. And once they were having tea and she turned kindly to Soko Morinaga as a young monk and asked him for his opinion on something. And the Roshi jumped in and said, no, he's not fit to speak. I don't know if you remember that little story. But this same woman, many, many years later, is, in her late 80s, when Soko Morinaga is a master himself, and she's called Miss Okamoto. She's been very kind to the monks in this small temple all her life, and but not at peace. And when she gets a diagnosis of her cancer, she comes to see him, and she says to him, "What in the world is the problem with the way I've practiced up until now, that death could be so frightening?" Because she's very afraid. "Please tell me how I've been wrong in my practice." Although Miss Okamoto was 24 years my elder, and by the way, he's described her as very kind and helpful, but a bit severe. As if she's always doing things with clenched teeth, he says. He says this woman had led a flawless, commendable life, but she had always stoically gritted her teeth in an effort to do good, to avoid doing evil. Sharply distinguishing between good and bad, forever sizing up and passing judgment on the situation. She went about her endeavors to do better, but always with her teeth clenched fast. Let me be clear about this. The kind of effort in which one bisects good and bad and then chooses one over the other with the intent to stack up causes for positive results does not produce peace of mind. As I explained to Miss Okamoto, you come from your mother's womb and leave in your coffin. The time in between you call life, and perhaps you think of going into your coffin as death, but true existence is birth and death, repeating itself instant by instant. If you look at a flame, it seems to burn continuously and give off constant light. In actuality, the wax is burning down bit by bit, and the wick that blazes in this instant exhausts itself, passing the flame farther along. Our lives appear to be unbroken blocks of 70 or 80 continuous years, but actually, they're just as the example we saw earlier. You're a wife or a husband when you look this way. You're a neighbor next door when you look that way. When you maintain the straightforward frankness of your own mind as it comes to life each instant, even without effort, you are beautifully born with each instant. You die with each instant and go on to be born again, instant by instant. Is that any, actually, maybe that's taking it slightly off track. Yikes. Dan, can you repeat the question? I just actually forgot. I was caught by the good and bad bit in it.
The question is, relating to your words to save and to savor. I feel a tension or dichotomy between the openness of non-duality and the task of reducing suffering, which would seem to require a discernment between good and bad. Could you speak to how I might start to reconsider this tension?
Yeah, but maybe, I mean, how could it be that is there a way that suffering is not bad, first of all? I mean, there are many prayers in Buddhism of thanksgiving for suffering, and suffering, the beginning of the path is the acknowledgement of suffering, the acceptance of suffering. Suffering exists. So the question isn't really, is suffering bad? It's more, what is real? And as we practice more deeply, the distinction between ourselves and all else is undermined. It's diminished, and it becomes clearer in flashes, and then more seamlessly that it was a mistake, that distinction. And that's not really it's just coming closer to reality, not really about good or bad. And as we find this one, the difficulty about non-duality is, how can everything be one and yet so infinitely various?
Yeah.
And that's really sort of, it's healing that. It's like, as long as there's non-duality and duality, as long as we're even talking about the non-dual, we're making this distinction between delusion and duality, and sort of enlightenment and non-duality. That has to be overcome.
Yeah.
That duality.
That's the theme of the sutra, really, that we were in today. And, when Angel Kyoto Williams says love and justice are not two, there's this great equanimity, equality, serenity, that word, to this one body, this one unconditionally indivisible, boundless body that is everywhere you turn. And yet she would march in a heartbeat chanting, no justice, no peace. And this would be change this system. That's it. The freedom to act then. That's there's the distinction I heard in this tension. And I thought what the piece you read from Morinaga was right about that. As long as our efforts to change, our longing for a more just world, our all of this activism that is so needed, to which we are called, each in different ways. As long as that can be measured, if there's a hair's breadth of difference, like if you can chalk it up, if there's anything outside it, it's going to be done in some sense with clenched teeth, without this great freedom. But from the great freedom comes absolutely the impulse by nature to help and to hurt for the world and respond.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's not a tension.
Right.
But I really am sympathetic to this because it was so important also to the ancestors. We have this great Shinjin Mei, and the first line is in that 6th century. It's early. I may be wrong, but Sozan, the great way, this way is not difficult if only you do not pick and choose. He's pointing exactly to this. So how in that great freedom where it's really impossible, you cannot cut it up, you can't divide it. The entire earth is the true human body, your body. And then I want this chaos to stop. And during the break, I made a donation, political donation today, I had to do something, you know? It's like,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, it doesn't negate heartbreak, doesn't negate rage,
No.
doesn't negate fear.
Yeah.
There are Tibetan tankers that, where Tara has got intense desire and greed showing on one side and rage on another and delusion in the middle, and they're all part of her. There's an analogy sometimes given that I just heard this actually not long ago in a talk by Shinzen Young. He was talking about how one analogy for non-duality is like the snail whose eyes emerge on stalks from its body. And, theoretically, one eye could look at the other eye. They're on those little stalks and they can swivel around. And that's like, we're sitting facing the wall, which is when, and this one of the faces of non-duality. Am I more alive than the wall? Is this body the living thing and the wall is not?
Is that flower your eye?
Exactly. Is the donkey looking at the well, or is the well looking at the donkey? So, this may sound really weird, but what if there's an aliveness, a conscious aliveness that is just as much being the wall as you? There's just no self. One aliveness. That's a very different prospect from this much easier to handle idea of a kind of wraparound awareness that includes everything. There are many, this is a point. The Vimalakirti Sutra makes one of the points sort of elsewhere in it, is just that it's just everything's limitless. If you think that limitless just means, well, there's this particular kind of awareness that's limitless, absolutely not. It means that the whole entirety is limitless. Just experiencing that kind of awareness, great. But if you think that's it, don't get stuck. Let go. That's merely an idea, and merely an experience we may get attached to. Think, I've got it now. This is limitlessly unfolding in every possible dimension, most of which we haven't conceived of.
And also uniquely expressed in an action for justice, for change, for care of the earth.
Yes. Yes. Save and savor. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Are we ready? Should we go on to another? Or Valerie, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah. Next question is, can you give the name of the Black female teacher who says to love everyone as you love yourself?
Angel Kyodo, Kyodo, is her Dharma name. Williams. And you can Google her and find a lot.
Just a little statement here. Love Street Zen. So glad to hear you talk about him. Bodhisattva. Let's see here. Next question. When there is trauma, who's traumatized? Is awareness a witness to trauma? A part of us which is never traumatized? Or is there nothing but trauma in that moment? Just this.
Valerie, shall I?
Yes, please.
Jump in or try to? I mean, I would say all the above. Absolutely. There certainly is a level of awareness that's untouched or is at peace throughout, but also when trauma is up, it's all there is. True. I mean, this is part of the point of this this series of retreats, is that there are different sort of registers of consciousness, of experience, and they all have their place. So we can't. I mean, there may well be a way that actually, if you can, I think there are some teachers who work with non-dual awareness, as they call it, which, by the way, I'm really feeling and thinking more and more is something like the 5th jhana or the 6th jhana. For those who don't know, the jhana are these absorption states that get progressively sort of more rarefied. And the 5th one is infinite spaciousness. And the 6th is infinite consciousness. And they go up to number 8. And then in some systems, there's a number 9. And in some systems, none of them constitute awakening. Awakening is in and after the 9th jhana. But in other systems, I think they are somehow regarded as levels of awakening. That a lot of, it's difficult territory to map. It really is. But anyway, ding, ding, ding. Oh, yes, there are some teachers who work with this, non-dual awareness, as they call it, and bring in trauma, sort of the methods, exercises for sort of bringing trauma into that somehow. I don't know a lot about this, but there's a way can be very healing, apparently. I'm not sure, it's not an area that I'm well versed in, the sort of, but I could say that it seems to me a Kensho experience is really the antithesis of trauma. And there are some people have talked about this, how there's a equivalent to PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a post spiritual experience or post infinitely benevolent experience, aftermath that has that can be incredibly healing. And I think this is where, because these experiences are unpredictable, this is where people you can get some kind of approximation of a little bit of it with psychedelics. There's some healing going on around psychedelics, and how in the right circumstances, carefully controlled circumstances, they can have an effect that lasts for months or longer, that's rather like the kinds of aftermath of a real revelatory spiritual experience. And they have ways of measuring that. They've a life change index now they've developed. How much do you appreciate death? How much do you appreciate life? How much do you no longer care about status and wealth and things like that? But Valerie, I'm wondering.
I was so glad you spoke to that, because I really, except for saying yes to all of them, the person asking it seemed to have already a sense, and again, it's so often we can trust our own experience of things. And when you said, when there's trauma, there's only trauma. If one can really taste that, there's no one there in that moment. There's nothing there. You can look all around in it. But I also, just outpouring of compassion, and every avenue, every creative avenue. And just, we have the capacity to be so harmed, and this immense capacity to absorb that and turn it under, so to speak, in the soil, and have really new life. I mean, it's new moment to moment, like what you were reading, this beautiful image, the candle. But to really know that, really taste that, this, utter turnaround. I suddenly remembered Rubens' image of being at the bottom of a well, and that's sort of ordinary experience, but trauma can certainly put us there. For all, for defense, and for a sense of shame, and this practice can be, and certainly a breakthrough, but just coming up out of the well, and suddenly the view is 360 times 360, just, and at the same time, it's this, and that's what heals trauma.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, Dan, should we take another?
Okay. I think this may be our last question.
Sure.
Questioner asks, question perhaps in the gradualist versus sudden realm. In Vipassana, there's an idea that when one enters full flow or has a level of certain concentration, then this may and likely will lift old karma up. And then one either has more work to do or can stay equanimous with this new sudden sensation and burn through again. Is this relevant in Zen? Are glimpses or flashes similar to the lifting up of more work to do? Or can one suddenly exhaust it all with a realization of mu?
Oh, that's a great question. I love that. I wish I could speak more knowledgeably and cogently to it. I feel, just off the top of my head, Valerie, excuse me jumping in, but I do actually think there can be sudden, very unexpected uprootings of a whole root system of suffering. I do think that's possible. Like digging out an old stump. At the same time, I really love that image. I resonate with it a lot myself, of sitting as purification when we're in a deep absorption state, that it is intrinsically cathartic. It's burning off suffering. I feel that, and it's a different way than the sudden shockwave through matter that can who knows what may be released by it. I don't know, Valerie, do you have a...
Yeah, I just wanted to say yes to this question. And in Sin, I really like your image of this purification. I mean it in the sense of burning off suffering. We are pure, actually, once you see. But yeah, that goes on, and how it shows itself also are, Ruben used to call them signposts, in keeping with this sort of Sherpa guide journey that we're each on this trek. And there are moments of clarity where some new aspect, something, and it's not thorough, but it really is like you've come to a mile marker on the path. And it's very encouraging. Not something to hold on to. You got to keep going. but yeah, so I liked the image. I just am reminded of all the appreciation for these different forms of practice and the overlap.
Yes, I just wanted to say something about how marvelous it is to fully allow intense, difficult emotions, and to realize that they are absolutely another form, another manifestation of the same empty aliveness, or whatever you might call it. There's nothing to be resisted. There's nothing to be fought. I mean, in terms of our inner life, at least, I mean, and in a sense, in terms of anything, but we are putting the wheel to well-being, to the development of well-being in the world. And part of that is recognizing that, heartbreak, fear, anger, they're actually, when we get right down to it, they're no problem. I mean, they're empty too, which isn't to deny them. It's the opposite. It's to fully liberate them.
Yeah. Oh, it's just amazing if, a rush of anger is just, that's it. Nothing else.
Yeah, I read something, maybe it was in the... Go ahead. Yeah.
It was the Dalai Lama, wasn't it? Who was asked about if fear could be like that. Is that what you're thinking of?
Could be about. I thought it was something with Suzuki Roshi saying, "If only I could be angry like that, like a thunderstorm
that's it.
That fully takes over and is gone."
Yeah.
And he said, "I wish I could be like that."
Yeah. Yeah. That's in Cornfield's book. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, all these great spiritual teachers get angry. Dalai Lama gets angry. Ramana Maharshi used to get angry. So they say. Fully human. Yeah. Well, I reckon Dan, that's it, right?
Well, actually, we do have one more quick question. If you guys could do it, if we can end, round 3 here. The questioner asks, is it worth it considering the jhanas in Zen practice? Doesn't Zen sidestep those? The approach different, so there's little helpful, maybe harmful talking about those?
I don't really see how it could be harmful. I mean, I hope not. I really hope not. But I think it's we're in a situation in the West now where all these different kinds of Buddhism are meeting one another. Who knows what Western Dharma, assuming we're all around, what Western Dharma is going to look like, or contemporary Dharma. It's already things that were inconceivable 50 years ago already going on in the Dharma that seem to be very helpful. I don't think, Zen is apparently named after the jhanas. The word itself is jhana, from the Pali to Chinese Chan to Japanese Zen. And it's very much about the heart of Zazen often seems to be rather about absorption, about samadhi. The fact that Zen doesn't parse it out quite so systematically, well, that's in keeping with Zen generally, where the schemes are greatly simplified in all kinds of ways in Zen. The schemes of earlier Buddhist parsing out of practice experience. And, that's, for some temperaments, that's probably very helpful. And for some, it may be more helpful to have more systematic stages of practice. But it's all good, I would guess. Valerie, do you have a take on it?
Nothing to add. Thank you I just flashed on Bodhidharma sitting facing the wall. Yeah.
Should we do same?
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the questions. Thank you, Henry.